It's Riley.
It's Sloan.
It's Briar. Hang on to your broomsticks. It's about to get eerie.
Today's episode could contain themes and elements uncomfortable to some listeners. Please check the episode description and remember to always take care of yourself.
So, in this episode, I'm going to be talking about Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
Ooh!
Because I figured not starting it off, but it's pretty close. It's in Louisville, Kentucky. I actually have the exact address. It's 4400 Paralee Drive in Louisville, Kentucky, 40272.
Down to the zip. What is that, about 3 hours away from us?
I think
Probably
so, or maybe
about, maybe a little less.
two, almost three. Well, so the way I have it wrote down, I'm going to go through the complete history of it, then go into the weird paranormal and some of the ghost stories about it.
The spookies. The haints.
The haints and the haunts.
One thing I always found interesting, though, for some reason, I always called it Sanatorium, and it's not, it's a sanatorium.
Is there a difference, or is it just pronunciation?
Potato.
Well, sanatoriums were mainly used as tuberculosis hospitals. But sanitariums are basically just hospitals, too, that took care of sickly people.
Okay, so there is a difference.
Yeah, they said the TB is basically the difference between sanatoriums and sanitariums.
Is that because they needed to keep them separate?
Yes.
Okay.
Because TB it still is, it's extremely contagious. But also, I think a lot of people, me included, I always think of, like, an asylum. That's what I always kind of thought of Waverly Hills. I didn't think of it as a tuberculosis hospital. So, no interesting fact, or people may be like, I already knew that, duh.
I only knew that because I've seen a lot of people go to Waverly, and a lot of, ghost shows do Waverly.
And they go through the history of it. Well, starting out, I found this very interesting. The building, or the place where the building was, actually started out as a schoolhouse. The land was purchased by a man named Major Thomas H. Hayes in 1883. And the land that he purchased was so far from civilization, or just the main population, that there was no schools close, and so he built his daughters a schoolhouse and hired them a teacher so they could get their schooling.
Was this just like a little tiny schoolhouse?
Mm-hmm. It was a one-room schoolhouse that he built for his daughters. And the teacher that he hired, her name was Lizzie Lee Hawkins. And she actually came up with the name for the schoolhouse. And I saw two different names. One was Waverly Hill or Waverly School/Schoolhouse.
Oh, so it's always been Waverly.
Is it because the location it's at, or just
No, she named it that because of her love for the Waverly novels written by Sir Walter Scott.
Well, what are those about?
I don't know.
Oh,
interesting.
Put a pin in that, because I will be Googling those.
It's really love stories.
Probably.
It's on a boat in the middle of the ocean.
Fabio's on the cover.
But if you didn't know, that's how Waverly got its name, and they just kept it. Okay.
Fabio sings sea shanties to the little ladies on the coast. I'm sorry.
Of Louisville. The coast of Louisville.
Sorry.
So, the land was later bought by the Board of Tuberculosis, and they wanted to build a hospital. The construction began in 1908 and opened on July 26, 1910, and it was a 2-story building, and it was only meant to hold 40 to 50 patients. So not a whole lot, but they thought it would work. But TB was so bad at the time that the hospital automatically started overflowing with patients. So the 40 and 50 patient building went.
I was going to say, because it's massive.
Yeah.
They're 50's enough. It's not that bad.
Plenty.
Wrong.
TB will never get that wild.
Yeah. Well, I think even, I may mention this later on, but they said they thought that it was really bad in Kentucky, especially. And they think it was because of all the damp marshland and stuff made it even worse to breathe in because tuberculosis it affects your lungs.
Yeah.
But in 1912, all of the patients were moved into tents on the ground because they were not able to handle the amount of patients in the building. And then there was an expansion that was going to make them able to hold another 40 patients. And in 1914, they made a children's pavilion that had 50 beds. So by 1912, the hospital was able to hold around 130 to 140 patients in total.
I feel like that's still not a lot.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't want to jump ahead of the game, but they were clearing them out pretty fast.
It gets dark
Yeah.
real fast. So, in 1924, they began to construct a new facility, and it was opened in 1926, and it was 180,000 square feet, and had patient rooms, labs, sunrooms, even recreational spaces, and it was going to be able to hold 400 and above patients. And this is the building that you can still go and see.
Are there pictures of the old ones?
I honestly don't know. I should have looked into that because I think that would have been interesting to see.
I'm sure
how
the
it started.
schoolhouse that was probably way too long ago. But I was curious about the original building and all that stuff.
I'm sure you could probably find the original building because they probably took before and after pictures like, oh, this is where we started and this is...
No. That'd be cool. Or maybe not. Maybe they were like, we just gotta have more room for the TB patients.
In 1943, a drug called streptomycin was found or created, or whatever the scientific term is. It was created by Albert Schatz as a way to treat TB.
That's that SOB creating shots.
But a trial was run between 1946 and 1948, and it showed real efficiency of treating TB patients. And in 1950, Waverly Hills had around 373 patients, and with the new drug, it dropped down to 293 patients by 1960.
So
it was really
difference.
working. It dropped over, I think it was, over 100 in just 10 years.
It's still big today. That's why you
Yeah.
still have to get tested for it all the time and in certain situations.
So, because that drug was working out so well, in 1962, Waverly Hills closed as a TB hospital, and remaining patients were transferred to Hazelwood, which was another tuberculosis hospital, to get treated with that drug.
Where's it at? Is it haunted?
Yeah.
What was the name of it?
Hazelwood.
I'm sure it is. It sounds haunted.
I think it may still be a actual thing now, like open.
It's still a hospital.
That don't mean it's not haunted.
Oh no, it
That's
could still be
true.
haunted.
Facts.
Yeah, because Waverly, it was just, I think because how big it was, it's the most popular, most known, but there was probably a bunch of TB hospitals because how bad it was getting in Kentucky. And then in 1963, the building opened as the Woodhaven Geriatric Center for elderly patients, and it closed down in 1981. So it was an elderly home, or I think even they said they worked with patients with dementia or other sort of mental illnesses and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I thought this was very funny, and I can only imagine if this went through. So in 1996, a non-profit group planned to build the world's tallest statue of Jesus after purchasing the building.
Uh-oh. So are they going to tear it down and build Jesus there?
No, nay, nay, nay.
No, nay, no, nay, no, nay.
No.
The project was between a sculptor named Ed Hamilton, a businessman named Robert Albert Haskey, and an architect named Jasper Ward. Those were the three that were wanting to work on it.
I'm building this Jesus statue.
Yes. And the statue was supposed to be 150 feet tall and was modeled after the Christ statue in Rio.
Okay.
Or it said Rio de
Janeiro. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's the one from the Fast and the Furious movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Just so you know.
If you didn't know, that's a good reference if you've seen that one.
But they wanted it where they wanted 150 feet. The Christ statue in Rio was only 120 feet. So they were wanted to be the biggest Jesus statue. Mm-hmm. And it was proposed to rest on top of the old sanatorium. What? And then the building was supposed to be converted into an arts and worship center.
Okay.
With just this big, huge Jesus statue on top of it.
Not with them paints.
That seems unsafe. To me. To slap a big, giant Jesus on a really old building.
Yeah.
Why don't they just put it out in the front yard? Put it in the courtyard.
Yeah. Just build it like can't you go inside the Statue of Liberty?
They could have put him on his side. With his, holding his head up. You know?
Just laying down.
Yeah. Across the top of it.
Oh.
But can't you go inside the Statue of Liberty? Then something like that? Build it to where, you worship inside of Jesus?
See out his eyes.
See the world through Jesus' eyes?
Like you can go up into the Statue of Liberty's thing.
Yeah.
So, no, can you go in her crown?
I think you can go in both. But they don't let a lot of people in the flame, I don't think, anymore.
It's too high up there.
America
but anyway,
really let it go.
How was he going to stand? Open arms?
Well, it said it was supposed to look like the one in Rio, so I'd say they were going to make an exact copy. They were just going to make it bigger.
And slap it on top of it. Now, were they slapping it on top of this building to cheat? Was that the extra feet?
Maybe.
I feel like we're stuck on the wrong portion of the story on this right now.
I told you, it's funny. Well, anyway, the statue was supposed to cost around $4 million, while renovations were estimated between $8 and $10 million.
Well, yeah, because they got to reinforce that old building.
And the way these people expected to pay for it was they expected that churches and nationwide individuals would donate money. But the plans were dropped in 1997 because only $3,000 was donated.
Well, listen, all they needed was Matt Bevan because he got that ark built. Just saying. Not to get political. But
shots fired.
Shots fired. They spent a lot of money on the ark, but they wouldn't shell it out for Jesus, so.
I mean, it's 1996, so.
I mean.
Okay, moving on. So, it was left by itself from 1997 until 2001 when Charles and Tina Mattingly bought Waverly Hills for $250,000. And they did some renovations, such as putting a new roof on in 2007, a sprinkler system, and some windows. And they're the people that still own it. Or at least I think Charles still owns it.
I can't believe they bought it for that little.
I know, and...
Was it like auctioned or something like that, I wonder?
I honestly don't know. I saw that price too, and I was like, well, I mean, that's a killing, because now looking at what Waverly Hills is now.
Well, after that Jesus statue went out the window, everyone was done with it. They're like...
And I also need to back up because I was not in support of Bevan and the ark. I can't have that out in the public, but I just had to... I had to fix myself before this went public. Anyway, I'm back to that, but I do think that, I know, well, I don't want to jump ahead. They had a lot of plans with it. Do you talk about their plans?
Like, for Charles and Tina?
Yeah.
No, I didn't go into the plans or see what they were trying to do. I just know that it said that they were doing renovations and stuff.
Because I know they were going to, it was going to potentially be almost like a resort, bed and breakfast-y type place. They thought about that at one point.
Could you imagine?
But I don't know if that was years ago. So now I think they just do a lot of the
Tours.
They do tours and they do a haunted house. I think they do Christmas lights too. I think they do a Christmas show.
So I'm like, all these times, I'm like struggling. So when did it become like popular as it is today, like known for it being haunted and...
Oh, when they bought it, it already was talked about it being haunted.
Okay.
Because from 1997 to 2001, that's a few years before, like, it was abandoned. And you had a lot of homeless people.
And that's when...
Or just kids doing graffiti or people
Urban
doing that.
explorers.
That's actually where a lot of the stories came from, because it actually became known as a, like, haunted house type deal. An abandoned haunted building.
Okay. That's
Which I'll talk more into that later. This I thought was interesting, too. Since tuberculosis was so contagious, Waverly Hills was basically its own self-contained community. It had its own zip code, its own post office, water treatment facility. They grew their own fruits and vegetables and raised their own meat for slaughter.
I knew that, like, it was so bad the staff would live there because they were so worried about carrying TB off. Mm-hmm. That a lot of the staff would just live there permanently full time because they didn't want to make anyone sick.
Oh yeah, that's something else I found and read. It was saying that also anyone who went into Waverly Hills, you were a permanent resident. Like you weren't allowed to leave, especially the workers. Like that was where you lived.
That's horrifying.
But people said that's kind of a contradiction because they would let loved ones visit and leave. So they really didn't know it was airborne. They thought it was, I guess, just skin-to-skin contact or something.
I'm not sure how they thought it was originally transplanted. Transplanted.
Yes.
What is the word?
Transported?
No. Transmitted.
There we
go. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about anymore.
Briar looked me dead in the eyes and repeated exactly what I said after making fun of me.
Transplanted.
Oh, you still said it wrong. You looked at me with confidence, and you were like, transported.
Well, I lost that confidence right
Also
after it came out of my mouth.
That's funny. So getting a little darker now after giggling.
Dim the lights.
Dim the lights.
So a lot of people died, and the bodies were transported at night through a tunnel-like system called the body chute. Or some people know it as the death tunnel.
Dun, dun, dun. Oh.
And it went down to a railroad that was behind the sanatorium. And they did this so other patients would not see the body.
Yeah, it's bad for morale. When you realize how many people are dying every day.
Death Tunnel, as the name, kind of reminds me of something that, like, a theme park would name a roller coaster. Like a scary, like during the Halloween time.
And do it like Blazing Fury at Dollywood.
Yeah.
And you go down and it's all the little puppets, but it's all these TB patients.
It's Death Tunnel.
And you're looking around.
Actually, if you look up pictures of it, it's really flippin' creepy.
And then at the end, they still play what's the one from Disney World?
It's a small world.
So then you're in the
all.
yeah. That's morbid. I would ride it.
I
think
take
all
me
of
on
us
it twice.
Maybe.
They also, I read a couple places said they also did this as a way of quarantine. That they wouldn't bring the bodies around the patients trying to recover. But I know. I think it was more the first one.
I mean, they made it a shoot for a reason. It was like the steps on one side, and then they're like, I'm tired of walking these down there. Swoop!
Yeah, it's just like a laundry chute. You just like
whoop,
shoving the pizza box in the
they're like, Tony, you down there? We got another one. Swoop!
That's terrible. You guys are awful.
We joke to cope.
Well, this gets a little bit even more.
It's cheaper than therapy.
You guys good? Yeah. Maybe. It gets a little bit more because I'm about to talk about the treatments that they did. So, the first treatment, which a lot of them, they were built on, sanatoriums were built on hills so they could have nice landscapes and stuff to look at and were surrounded by nature. And they wanted to create a peaceful atmosphere for the patients. And
So
also
they have
that
slope for the shoot.
the main treatment they went by you guys, was fresh air, sunlight, good food, rest, and high morale would help cure the disease.
I mean,
that's the main treatment they did.
Yeah, I know they were trying.
That's like the equivalent of like when people are like, just be happy, like quit being sad.
Yeah, or when I had a boss tell me my bad attitude was why I was sick. Not the thyroid, not the diabetes.
It's my
bad
attitude.
Your bad attitude.
They tried.
Things have not changed.
Well, I got it. It's making you feel comfortable because you are in a hospital away
That's the
from
best
your
they
home.
could do.
Yeah.
But nature is not. That's not my cup of tea. Take me back to the city.
But I also have a list of all the medical treatments that they did. And these are the ones I found. There was probably some more that they did that other people know of. But these are the ones I found. So the first one that they did was a lobectomy, which was a surgical procedure where they would remove infected parts of the lung. So,
They just go in there and take it out, thinking
this will help out. The next one, pneumoectomy, they just removed the entire lung.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
How many people of these surgeries survived?
It didn't give me a definite number, but it seemed like a lot of people said a lot of people didn't survive these surgeries.
There's not in that, I don't think, not in that time period. And
no.
especially the whole lung.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no.
There was like maybe one or two where they said it actually started working, but then the other ones, everybody was saying like, this wasn't really working.
And it doesn't matter if you still have the TB like going on in you, or you're in this huge TB quarantine facility. Even if you got rid of it, you're just gonna get it again.
Yeah.
And then you only got one lung, so if it gets worse than that one, you're...
And then they're like, well, how much of this can we take? Let's just hack away a little more of this lung. And then you're left with nothing.
Yeah.
Not a single bronchiole in sight.
Yeah. The alveoli is gone.
Yeah.
So the next one is a phrenicotomy. That's a big word, but it's...
Phrenicotomy?
Thank you. I think that's what it is. But it's also a phrenic nerve crush. I had that in parentheses because that was also the name for it. And they would cut off the nerve supply to one diaphragm, and it becomes paralyzed and allows the lung on that side to heal.
So you don't use it?
Yeah. So like they cut, I guess, that phrenic nerve off, and it makes one side of your diaphragm stop working, and your lung doesn't work.
Yeah, but once you sever a nerve, there's no going back.
So then you might as well just take the whole thing out.
Then you might as well just take the lung out, because even if it's healed, it's useless, because they can't...
Yeah, well, maybe, because it says a crush, so maybe they didn't cut it, but that's what the definition said. Yeah, that they cut off the supply to that nerve, so and they just...
Now I'm just thinking about, like, the hair feathers. And those, like,
the beads.
Yeah.
Like, they clamp them on.
So the next one is heliotherapy, or sun treatment, just bathing in the sun. So that's why they had a lot of sun rooms and...
Yeah. Which I knew that, like, in the design, they said that if they thought you would survive, you were on the nice side of the building, where you had bigger, spacious rooms, and you could go out on the balconies. But if they thought you were a lost cage, you were pretty much in a shoebox of a room. Like, it was like a tiny room on the other side with, like, no windows and stuff, and you were just...
You're there till
you die. Because, like, all those pictures where you see all the patients, that wasn't everybody. Where you see the patients lined up outside in the sun, little kids playing on the little playground that was upstairs. Those were the hopeful ones. On the other side of the building was closest to the death chute.
Easy access.
This next one kind of made me shiver a little bit and cringe a little bit. It's the Thoracoplasty, and it's removing rib bones from the chest wall to collapse the lung. And that's what they do. And it said the average patient required 7 to 8 ribs to be removed. But surgeons only wanted to remove 2 to 3 at a time. So they would do multiple surgeries where they removed your rib bones. So your lung would collapse.
So I didn't know it was to collapse. I thought they used to do that for, like, thinking that you needed more room.
It could be that
like,
too.
Because your lungs, because they would, like, swell up.
Yeah.
With fluid, and then they couldn't move a whole lot in your chest. So they would do that to create more room.
Maybe that's what they mean by collapse, was that gives it more space so it could, like, start going down. But that one just sounded awful to me, because I was like, you're going to have to do 2 to 3 surgeries if the surgeons only wanted to remove 2 to 3 at a time.
Ugh.
So the next one is artificial pneumothorax. And it's introducing air between the coverings of the lung, and it collapses the diseased area of the lung. This one actually said it worked. Like
it was successful?
Yes, in some cases.
Okay, so they would put air between, like, is in the lung?
It said the coverings of the lungs. That's what the definition said. So I don't know if it put it into the lungs specifically, or if it was just
between that and the, what is it called? The pleural something?
Yeah.
Pleural something.
All my years of biomed are failing me now.
It's all I can think of is the meninge, which is in the brain.
Yeah.
And it's the equivalent of that in the lungs. It's the pleural something. But, so that's horrifying to me. Because then they're, like, filling up a cavity with air that
doesn't need air in it.
Yeah, but it actually supposedly worked. Or was having...
Because it's pushing all that, probably squeezing those lungs. That's all I can think of, is how tight that would make your chest feel.
Yeah. The next one was posterior rest, and the patient lies on the affected side, and it restricts the excursion of the lung and puts it in a partial rest. So basically, if your right side was infected, you would lay on your right side, and it put pressure, so it would, like, get a chance to rest while your other side got more air.
That's actually interesting to me, because when COVID first started going around, there were all those videos of those people being like, if you have COVID right now, try these, like, stretches and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it would be, like, laying on the side and, like, doing certain things so you could, like, breathe better to, like, open up your airways.
Mm-hmm. Well, the next one, I only found it once, but it's called the shot bag method. And it was if the patient had an infection in both lungs, a 1-pound bag of shot, I'm guessing, like, gunpowder or something, it just said shot, was put on both collarbones, so on both sides of their chest, and every week the weight would increase 4 to 5 ounces until a patient had 5 pounds on each side. So 10 pounds of pressure in total on top of their chest. And so it would restrict the excursion of the lungs and teaches correct breathing and produces partial rest for the lung, or for the lungs. So you would learn how to correctly breathe.
So that's kind of similar to when they would use the iron lungs. And you'd be in those big canister pretty much. And it does the pressure. Or like, was a hyperbaric chamber. Is that what that is?
You guys would know more than me.
I don't know.
Or is that where you're in it completely? I don't know if it's the same thing. But that's what the iron lung, I'm pretty sure, would do, is just put pressure on.
I'm pretty sure.
Your chest and your body. And you can see pictures of that, and people's heads are, like, hanging out, and they're just like, oh.
Well,
putting pressure on them.
I think even, like, some singers or something, they put books on their diaphragm to practice breathing, or they'll put some sort of weight on their chest/diaphragm to teach them how to breathe.
Take the better breaths.
Yeah.
Not short, shallow ones.
It just reminds me of Glee when Mercedes...
With the maraca.
Yeah.
So, when I looked up the deaths that happened throughout the years, I saw a bunch of different answers. So, the one you see a whole lot is that they say around 50 to 60,000 people died. Which is
just there at Waverly?
Yeah. So, like, because people say the medical records were destroyed so you really couldn't know, or they were being secretive, and it's kind of a conspiracy. Then I found another answer, and it says, historians say that the actual number was around 8,000. Because when I was looking through deaths and deaths that happened each day, it said that there was around 1 death per day. And then I saw one thing, I didn't write it down, but it said during some sort of war was happening and soldiers were coming back and they had tuberculosis real bad. That was the worst time period, and that one day they lost over 100 in one single day.
Well, here, let's speculate for a minute. If there was just one person dying a day, why'd they need a death chute?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, there's...
Well, and it was... I know TB was a huge, like... I don't know if it's a pandemic or an epidemic, but it was, like, bad, and it took out a lot of people. So, but you say in the war, it makes me feel like, was it a conspiracy theory where they're like, oh, no, we have plenty of people. Our people aren't dying by the thousands.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think either answer is wrong. I don't think we'll ever know, truthfully, how many people died at Waverly. So it's up in the air. It could be 50 to 60,000, or it could be a low number, like 8,000. I mean, that's still a lot, especially for 1900s.
Yeah. Because I just feel like if it's one person a day, then they could have just, like, been like a typical type of hospital where you have your little morgue and you just take your person there and then haul them out. Like, there doesn't have to be any sort of...
secrecy.
Right. Why do you need some way to speed, like...
You got something called the body chute. Out.
Yeah, and it's designed to, like, get people out fast because you had so many bodies. One a day doesn't seem like... That's a lot. One a day is still a lot. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't seem like it would require a death chute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless they say that's the reason they built the body chute was because it was a form of quarantine keeping the infected. But everybody had TB.
Why not just have, like, you would just have your exit? Why you have to have it to where you can, like,
you're secretly taking it to a railroad?
Right.
It takes it away.
And if it was that big about quarantining the body, just burn them suckers. That was terrible. I didn't mean that to be so abrasive. But just burn them.
Well, cremate them, yeah. Well, because that's how it is now. If a body has something toxic or dangerous on it, they cremate a body.
Right.
Learned that from Bones.
Yeah. Shady stuff, but I'm curious, because that would be something I'd want to look into, because I'm curious about a war at that time that seems something very much like America would do. And be like, no, we don't have that many people dying. We're strong. But... Deja vu. But
death chute.
Right, and I think there's just more to it. Also, or they just don't know because they just weren't organized at all.
Yeah, that could be it too. Before we go into the ghosts and strange events, I also look, because I didn't really look into the nursing home thing, but there was something saying that they used electroshock and there was some abuse happening there, so some of the ghosts could be from the 80s to the 90s.
Yeah,
that not
really
just
didn't
from
surprise me.
Yeah, no. I didn't look into that because I was more looking at that history, but I did see that pop up. So the next thing, or the last thing we're talking about, is the ghost and creepy.
The
haze, which it was kind of hard finding some stuff about it because a lot of people just have their own personal experiences, so I didn't find too much about it. But shout out to my friend John. He did help me out with finding some stuff. So I appreciate that.
He's our super fan.
Yeah.
Always listening.
We love you, John.
We love you. We see you.
Yeah. This one's for you. This one's for you, Artie. I got Glee on the mind today.
Ooh. So, like I was saying earlier, from 1997 to 2001, Waverly Hills was abandoned, and it became a local haunted house. According to the homeless or people looking for shelter, or even teenagers started looking for ghosts. Like, you know how you go to an abandoned building because it's creepy.
The heathens.
Yeah. But some of the stories that were going around was that there's a little girl that was running up and down the 3rd floor solarium. There's a little boy with a leather ball. And apparently I found he's one that a lot of people see, and they call him Timmy. And apparently on the tours they have, like, little cat balls and stuff, and he likes playing with those with people.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of them take balls and toys and play. Because there was kids.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of kids there, too. Because you can see that because they have, like, a playground and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I knew him with the ball because I've seen several ghost shows take balls. And they've actually had to move and stuff, too.
Yeah. Apparently, there's also a woman with bleeding wrists crying out for help. And also, if you go towards her, she screams and takes off running down the hall. And then there's a man in a white coat who is mostly seen walking into the kitchen. Then, some of the other strange things is strange sounds, slamming doors, the lights appearing in the building when there's nobody in there and no lights are supposed to be on. Objects being thrown, people being hit, apparitions, footsteps, and also strange smells. And even a lot of people say they smell food cooking, such as fresh bread from the kitchen.
Which, that would make sense because, like, impressions, like, I can't think what it's called, but in haunting situations, you said one of the things that they try to make sure they had was good food.
Mm-hmm.
So, think about you're dying of TB, it's not pleasant. One of the happy things was probably smelling, like, the fresh bread or knowing you're going to get good food.
Yeah.
So, there's probably a lot of energy into those memories, if you believe in that. The energies can make things leave impressions.
Well, it's also like the man in the white coat is always seen going into the kitchen. So even, like, if there's ghosts of doctors and stuff, that probably was one of their top things, too. Yeah. That was their happy spot, is they got a good meal for the day. Mm-hmm. This one was interesting. So there's 2 big stories about the room 502. And according to everything, there's, like, 2 major incidents that happened with 2 nurses. In 1928, a 29-year-old nurse committed suicide by hanging herself from the light fixture. It was said that she was pregnant and unmarried and that her depression just got the best of her.
Yeah, I've heard that one. There's always, like, the added stories, but something about it was, like, a married man that got her pregnant. And she was unmarried at that time, which is, a no-no. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't going to leave his wife. And so then she was going to be a single mom. And then when, they're having to stay at the place.
Yeah.
So I've heard that story.
Yeah. There's also, I saw some people saying that they weren't sure if this story was true. And some people full-on believe it. Because some say that, some of the versions of the story say light fixture is what she used. Some said she used, like, the curtain rod, or she used something from the ceiling, or so it changes, but it's always that story. Then there's the other one, and it's in 1932. Another nurse that worked in the same room jumped from the roof patio and died from the fall. And this one's a little mystery because nobody knows if she did it just to do it, or if somebody pushed her.
Wow. And it was the same room?
Mm-hmm. Because the 5th floor was where the nurses' stations were. It had a pantry, a medicine room, and their linen room, and also the bedrooms for the nurses to rest in. And 502 was one of the restrooms.
That's weird that there's 2 different stories. Was it a haint that pushed her?
We will never know.
We might. We can go have a seance.
There we go. So, this is one of... I will say this beforehand. If I saw this thing coming towards me, or even saw it, I would probably crap my pants and just die right there. Or take off running, like pushing everybody out of the way and be like, get me out of here!
Well, I mean... You've done that because a baby's cried in a car.
That did not sound like a flippin' baby.
Just
sounded like a little gremlin.
What the heck was that?
Yeah, I apologize. I was leaving you guys in the dust.
You were not just leaving me and Mom. You were sacrificing us.
And then I was just there, not knowing what was going on.
Yeah, I was. I grabbed Mom and Riley by the shoulders and pushed them
back.
And then both Mom and Riley are like, a baby? So, this is one of the ones that John helped me find. And it's called the Creeper. And it is a shadow creature with long, twisted arms and legs. It is seen mostly in hallways, crawling on all fours, either on the floor and sometimes on the ceiling.
That's just Garrett.
That's just rude. But I was like, that's creepy in itself.
Oh, yeah. I've heard
Very
there's
creepy.
a lot of ones that talk about that too. And then that's creepy because the shadow, like, you know, shadow creatures that you hear can be like evil and malevolent.
Yeah.
And then it wants to scuttle around on the ceiling.
Anything on the ceiling,
No.
I'm out. No. Also, what's creepy about it too, it says when people have encountered the creeper, they get this overwhelming feeling of dread and doom, and sometimes they even have to leave the property before that feeling goes away. Like they have to leave completely for them to feel normal again.
It sucks your soul.
Probably.
There was 2 more that I'd seen, but I couldn't find any story of it like happening at Waverly. But apparently doppelgangers, which is an apparition or a double of a living person, have been seen at Waverly. You'll see yourself.
That's creepy.
Yeah, and I've heard that one too. Which, and you know, the story is always if you see your doppelganger, like, then you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, for some reason, I always thought a wraith was way scarier than it actually is, but the definition of it is a ghost or ghost-like image of someone, especially one seen shortly before or after their death. So, just a ghost, but...
Yeah. I always thought it was scary too. It was supposed to be scarier. Like, Dead by Daylight, I thought was like a good representation of a wraith.
Yeah.
Where it's all, like, tortured and...
Yeah. No, they're just dramatic.
But I could see that being, like, creepy too, especially back in the day too, if you just saw somebody shortly and then you see their ghost thing and you're like, I just saw this person, or...
Yeah, so maybe those were back in the older days.
Yeah.
Since it says that, like, right after their death.
Yeah, before or after you see the apparition of somebody. But yeah, like I said, this was one where I'd like to hear other people's stories that went to Waverly and see what their experiences were. Because I found all the information about the history and some of the common creepy things that happen. But I didn't want to take anybody's stories. I'd much rather just hear and everybody talk about it.
Yeah.
I know I follow on Facebook, and they're always posting people's pictures and stuff. Like, they'll be like, oh, there's no one around, and there'll be an apparition in the picture. Mm-hmm. It's really cool. Yeah. I'd like to go. Because you can set up, they do like historical tours during the day, and then you can do their short little tours, or you can even, I think it used to be after you've been there before, you can actually do your like independent ghost hunts with groups, which would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be cool.
Well, yeah, that's on Waverly. I thought it was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of history.
Yeah, that was one. I knew it was old and it was probably going to have some history. I did not think that it was going to have that much history.
There's a lot of really good ghost shows. Ghost Adventures goes, and you know they're a load. Josh Baggins, is dramatic. Zach Baggins, but I can't get over it. He should be Josh. It just fits.
Yeah, it does.
They do some good ones there. I think they even did a big live Halloween special there before, and I know Taps has went before. But there's good ones. I like the stories of it. And the people that work there always seem to have good ones.
Yeah. I feel like I read somewhere with like the doppelganger thing, it's a lot of workers or tour guides seem to have the doppelganger experiences.
I feel like that doesn't surprise me. Like, them, like, being there more than once.
Mm-hmm.
So...
It has time to happen.
Yeah. I think I also saw somewhere like where it was like your twin completely except their eyes would be hollow. Like, they wouldn't have eyes.
That's creepy.
That's very creepy.
It's like...
And they're like, let me lead you to the death tunnel. The death chute.
And it's like, scuttle, 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 scuttle.
On the ceiling?
Yeah.
I don't do anything on the ceiling. Nope.
Listen, I don't want to go down the stinking death chute today living, because anytime I ever see people do it, they're like, ew, all these spiders. I'm like, nope.
I'm out.
I'll be on the patio sunning. I ain't going down no spider death chute. God. I would probably die. I would see a spider follow me, and that'd be it.
Panic
and I'd go
attack,
rolling.
heart attack.
And I'd go rolling down the stair side of the death chute, not the ramp side.
And someone would be like, did you get something? You'd be like, a spider.
Yeah. I was pushed by an 8-legged freak.
How dare you talk about spiders that way?
I'm better with spiders now a little bit, as long as they're not in my
Still, if
personal
one
space.
falls on her, though, she's still gonna be.
Then I suck air, and then I can't function. That's a lie. They still freak me out. If I can control the situation of watching them, I'm fine. I don't want them around.
Alrighty. Hope you
Waverly
guys enjoyed.
Hills.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Until next time,
Remember, you can find us on
our own website, Facebook,
Instagram,
YouTube, Twitter.
and even Pinterest.
Links are in the description.
As always,
stay weary
stay leery.
And stay eerie.